So thank you so much, everyone, for being here at this prime event, the Assessor's Chair. The idea here is that we are going to be sharing a specific recording of a session as a demonstration of coaching. And together we are going to debrief this session together as a group and see what are the strengths, what are the challenges, what are the opportunities that we have in this particular recording, and with the idea of us growing in our skills and being able to learn even more about our coaching and what we do in coaching. The idea here is to take the mystery out of what happens when someone is assessing your recording for your certification and for when you are going through level 1 or a level 2 program for you to be able to get that certification with the ICF. So take a little bit of the mystery out of that. And also realizing also the distinction between what is a good coaching session and what is a session that is good to submit for certification, right? There is a distinction there, and we are going to talk about that. What is a good coaching session, and what are the expectations that we have around a session for certification? And for us to, the goal is for you to become more confident in when you are recording your sessions, when you are preparing for certification, making sure that you know and that you feel more confident in that process. But most importantly here, more than the certification, if you've been following me, you know that I am a huge advocate for us to grow in our coaching skills. Certification happens, right? If we focus on developing ourselves as a coach, certification will happen naturally along the course. So the idea here today, even though we are focused on the recording, we are focused here on growing as a coach. Amy, anything else you would like to add here?
No, just hopefully that we just demystify some of this for all of you, and that for those of you who've gone through certification, that you know there are people behind where you send your recordings and how we think about it, how we approach it. So that's our goal today.
The recording that we are going to share with you is an ACC level recording. We will be having another prime event where we are going to be sharing a PCC level recording, and this is going to come in the future. And this particular recording is from one of our students at Prime Coaching Academy. That have gone successfully through the process of concluding our level 1 program. So it's a joy for us to share this with you. We are going to start sharing the recording, and we will stop along the way so that we can debrief what's happening in the moment of the recording. Okay, we have at least 2 moments when we are going to stop the recording. The recording is about 30 minutes long. And we are going to be sending this, making stops along the way. Meanwhile, what we would love to share with you here, and I'm going to put in the chat, are 2 documents to support you and support your listening. One is what we call a reflection form. And if you are, because I see here some of our students in the group, so if you are a student at Prime Coaching Academy, you most likely have already that reflection form. If you don't, it's going to be in the chat right now. You can download that reflection form for you. This is a way for you to reflect back and think about, what's happening in this recording. What is my learning? So perhaps this is a resource that you can have for yourself. And of course, I'm also going to share with you the ICF Core Competencies as well. It's the second document that you have available there. You may also know that when an assessor is assessing a recording with the ICF, especially at ACC level, we have what we call the ACC bars. These bars were created by the ICF to support assessors into what are the standards and what are the expectations that we as a community have in order to grant that coach an ACC level certification. We will not be sharing the bars with you. If you want the bars, you can go to the ICF website. They are available to you for you to download. But the reason why we will not send you the bars is because we don't want you to be concerned about them. What we want you to be concerned about is being the best coach that you can be and understand the ICF core competencies. Because Amy and I firmly believe that if you understand the ICF core competencies and if you are following the suggestions by your facilitator and your mentor coach, the bars are going to be fulfilled naturally. If you start thinking too much about the bars, it's going to be all on your head, and you're not going to be able to be present, and then you're not going to be able to really conduct a coaching conversation well. So the idea, the assessor, the ACC bars, PCC markers, they are assessors' tools. Don't worry too much about them. Your job is to worry about competencies and be mindful of the competencies and be able to demonstrate them well. Make sense? Any questions before we get started? So get a piece of paper or perhaps even the reflection form. Take notes while we are playing this recording, and let's jump in. Okay, let me share my screen here. The recording, by the way, it's going to be an audio only. And the reason why we are sharing audio only is because an assessor only assesses through audio, not video. Okay, so we are going to do just like an assessor does. Okay.
Really tune your ears to what you're hearing and how the competencies are being demonstrated. Then take your notes, because we're going to want some of your reflections.
Let's go.
Hi, Sonia.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. How was this past week?
It was good. I'm working on the things that we talked about, but I feel like I didn't finish, but I did some work on each area about like thinking about transferable skills and thinking of ways to network. And I found like this job opening at this company like that I feel like represents like a type of work that I'm interested in. And so I was thinking about like maybe a next step could be to email someone. So like I found this job at this company, like this curriculum company, Amplify, I'm sure you heard of them. And when I worked at a school, like we used their curriculum, and like my principal like had a good, like our school had like a really close relationship with them, and they would come to our school and we'd like provide them feedback. I like went to their headquarters and like we like unpacked some of their curriculum, and they often have postings for like freelance or for some sort of like ELA curriculum. And I feel like they have the type of job where it's like a remote first company, but if you're in New York, you can go and work in Brook, and their office is in Dumbo. And so like I would love to like see if I could reach out to someone to just be like, hey, I worked with your company, like I loved this, I love what you guys were doing, like almost like an informal email.
Mm-hmm.
Because as we've talked about last time, and kind of like I think in general, like I feel like nothing's gonna for me to make a change in my like career, like I need to network.
Mm-hmm.
And I need to build relationships. I think sometimes I'm just like I don't know next steps. And I mean, kind of like what we were talking about last week about, and like what we were just talking about is like, I love what I do, but sometimes I just feel like I'm exhausted. And so I'm like, how can I continue to do the things I love, but have more time to like recharge and reset? And I think that's what I've been thinking a lot about too, is like, I love what I do. It's so exhausting. And so I feel like I get burnt out, not because I don't like it or like the people. It's like nothing's wrong, but I'm just like, I'm exhausted.
Yeah, it sounds like you've done a lot of thinking, and you have a clear next step in regards to one aspect of what you want to do.
Yeah. And like, again, it's just like, I also am torn. I was thinking about this because of my current job, I'm making more money than I've ever made as a teacher. If I were to leave, let's say I were to leave and get a more sustainable job in the DOE, sustainable, maybe my hours would be less, but I would be making $10,000 less. And so that's like a thing I'm like, because like to me, you know, and I've done some like reflecting where, you know, I was doing this career thing where they're like, okay, how much money, like, will you look at your finances? And I'm not really willing to sacrifice finances in this city while living in New York City. It's just not, doesn't make sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's an aspect I think about is like, what am I willing to compromise on?
Mm.
And I don't think I'm really willing to compromise that much on money while I'm living alone in an apartment that's expensive.
So what would you like to talk about today?
Okay, you know what I'd like to talk about? I was thinking about this earlier. I would like to talk about like mindsets. Like I think you really helped me last week when you mentioned like focus on the kids and like your relationships with children and what's going on in the classroom, and the rest is just noise. And I find that so helpful because then it puts me in the right mindset. And so I think like what I'm like noticing about myself is like, okay, I'm in this job, I'm in two jobs that I like, but I'm exhausted, which is it's all right. And so I think like I would like to really be able to focus on like I have to keep reminding myself like you're doing things that you when you were young you dreamed of doing. Like if you were young and you've learned what you were doing in the future, you'd be like, what? Oh.
I love that reaction.
Like sometimes I picture my little fourth grade Sonia with like a cute little bowl cut and I was always wearing a jumper. Like if I tapped on her shoulder and was like, guess what you're gonna be doing? That Sonia would be like, what?
How does that make you feel?
I mean, it makes me feel so happy. So I don't know. I think my ultimate goal is to find something that maybe is a little bit like involves all the things I like, but maybe allows me to have more flexibility in my life, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to remind myself that what I'm doing is like what I've always wanted to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess my question is like, how can I make it work more for me? If that makes sense. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What does having a good mindset mean to you?
I think it means focusing on like what you have and not what you're missing. So like, for example, if I think about my job, I'm like, wow, how cool that I have an opportunity to teach English with kids that are so interesting and that are just like ninth grade. While it is exhausting, it's like what I think is so cool every day is like kids are just developing themselves, starting to think about what's like they're starting their like planting the seeds for their adult life. And I think that's like really cool. I also think that there's just so many kids that are so interesting and creative. Like I just feel like there's like a room full of opportunity. But if I'm in a bad mood, then I'm like, oh, they're misbehaving. Like, you know what I mean? It's like if I focus on like the good things, then things don't feel so stressful. But if I'm just like, oh my God, no one's listening, I'm exhausted. It just makes everything miserable.
Mm-hmm. You said the word exhausted a couple of times.
Yeah.
What do you mean by saying I'm exhausted?
Like physically exhausted. And I think like my left eye is switching. Like I feel like I'm just physically exhausted when it comes to the weekends. And I'm noticing that like I can barely wake up on the weekends because I'm so tired. And I feel like I'm running on adrenaline all week. And I feel like that's hard a lot of times is like I feel like in teaching, I think like I'm starting to really think about like my quality of like my physical quality of life, how it's impacted. Like I don't really get to work out and I love working out. I don't drink enough water. I'm like dehydrated all the time. So when I say I'm like exhausted, I think what I mean is I'm physically exhausted.
What is causing that?
I think that it's like I think all of the mental work that comes with like teaching. And I've reflected on myself too. I think I'm definitely becoming like a type A teacher, that I've never been like this really, where I'm starting to fixate on things that like, because I'm co-teaching, but I'm also co-teaching with someone who's new. So I have to sort of like let go and allow her to like make missteps kind of, which sometimes stresses me out in the sense of like, I'll give you an example. Like the other day, I'm like, these routines are not tight, but we haven't taught the kids how to do the routines. So I'm like, I can't be upset because like this routines haven't been established in a clear way. But I'm kind of like, if I was alone in here, I mean, that's all I would be focusing on. But then, so I think like sometimes like that over analyzing that's exhausting.
Mm.
And so I think sometimes when I'm like overthinking in a situation, that makes me physically exhausted.
Mhm. No, that makes sense.
I'm writing that down in my notes. I'm taking notes in my simple notebook.
That makes sense. When you are in your good mindset that you
Yeah.
referenced earlier, that you focus on the positive, how does that impact your physical exhaustion?
I think I don't think about it. It's a great point. I don't think I think about it. I don't think I notice.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what would success look like at the end of our session today?
It's a great question. I think a success would look like maybe like an action item something that I can like focus on this week that will keep me centered
Mm.
or grounded in the positive mindset versus like over analyzing the exhaustion and like which leads to exhaustion.
Mhm.
If that makes sense.
Let's pause here for a second and let's reflect on what has happened so far. And we would love to open the mic for you. What have you noticed that this coach has done well up to this moment?
This is Cindy. I believe she's allowed some space for the client to be able to just process, and it seems to be pretty effective.
Excellent. I love that. Open space for the client to process. Yeah, what else? What did you notice that the coach did well?
I think that an objective for the day and ask her what success looks like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So wonderful, Arlene. So she has asked, what is the focus of the conversation? And she allowed for space, as Cindy has said. And now that the client has been able to explore that situation a little bit more, she went and said, okay, so now that we explored here, what the success looks like for our conversation here today. And then the client was able to situate themselves and be able to verbalize, this is what I would like to have. Excellent. Mark, you started sharing as well.
Yeah, I was just going to say that at the start of the session, the coachee kind of had she could have had a cop-out answer. Like she started out with the session saying, "Oh, I really would be great if I could write a letter to this, just an informal thing." And I think I just reflected on myself, going, "Well, that's like the easy thing to grab onto and go, let's just end the session. Why don't you just send the email? Check, we're all good." So I think just the way she's continued to press on the exhaustion now, like I wrote down immediately, that's, the word you're not going to step over, exhaustion.
And the coach really noticed that and asked the client. right? So notice what the client is saying, and also notice that the client is saying repeatedly. She talked about exhaustion several times. And then the coach goes in, okay, so what does it mean when you say that you're exhausted? What is this about? So being curious around the topic and around the expectation that the client has for this particular conversation. Excellent. What else?
She also did the outcome, the meaning, and at the end there, she got the evidence. So she did everything around focus. And she also said, oh, I love that. You know, when they had some reaction, she repeated, oh, I love that too, or whatever. So she acknowledged the client.
Yeah, so there is a partnership being built. And it's not something that is prescriptive, but it's organic. The coach is following the client where the client is going, and at the same time paying attention. When is the time that I'm going to tie the bow here? When is the time that I'm going to ask about outcome? When is the time that I'm going to ask about the focus of the coaching conversation? What are the words that the client is saying that I can anchor the client or support the client in expanding a little further? Excellent. Anyone else?
Sticking with the client's language, I noticed.
Point, I loved how she made the connection between overthinking and focusing on good things. She asked the question, well, and I can't remember whether she asked, what happens to your mindset when you focus on X? And I love how she made that connection, because it allowed the client to take her direction in a different way and say, oh, it really doesn't impact me the same way. So thought that was great.
Yeah, the question was, when you are in your good mindset that you mentioned earlier, that you focus on the positive, how does that impact your physical exhaustion? So putting the two things together that the client said for the client to develop. One thing that I want all of us to pay attention here is that in the background, the coach is very clear about the points of establishing a session agreement. And if you know my prime model, the establishing the focus for the coaching conversation, the coach is very mindful of these points in the background. But the coach, in relation to the client, the coach is having a conversation with the client. And then the coach brings these points as it unfolds naturally in the coaching conversation, instead of being very prescriptive of, I have to ask this question number one, question number two. I'm building a relationship with the client. Okay, so
Go ahead.
Amy, yes.
Joe, didn't you say language was something you noticed too, matching the client?
It seems like a smaller thing, but I think it's important. Sounds like for this client that she's using the client's language. You didn't say you're tired, you said you're exhausted, you know.
Yeah, great notes. And Lisa said very simple and concise, open-ended questions. And the one thing I'd like to add here too is in her listening skills. And as we move forward in this recording, I want you to hear, she almost lets 2 or 3 beats go before she starts to speak again after the client's unpacking. And she really has got this down wonderfully. And you'll see the client almost always adds those nuggets, those really golden nuggets in those 2 or 3 beats.
Amy, I was curious about that, because listening really carefully, at times she almost sounded hesitant and less than confident, you know, almost like she was tiptoeing into the question. And I didn't know if it was technique, but now what you say, you know, I can get that as an approach.
Yeah.
But at times it sounded like she was almost unsure of, like, you know, asking a question very almost carefully.
Well, and she's very intentional in her questions, I think, which is, and, you know, let me just point out here too, when we're assessing, we're not just looking for the evidence of the competencies. We're also looking for the quality. And this would be a particular quality in her listening skills, right? Giving that silence, that short space, but also to be very intentional with her questions, to craft her questions intentionally.
Amy, I have a comment to add to Mary and Mark. I found that there was a lot of bait in the water. And so
Yes.
that's kind of my weakness, to be really candid and vulnerable here. So I don't know who wants to tie that to what direction, but I felt my comment and what Mary said and kind of what Mark said. And so that's my version of it. There's a lot of bait in the water. And I think the coach handled it well by all of those things that everybody's pointed out. I might have gotten tripped up a little bit sooner with all that bait.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, one thing that I appreciate about this coach, well, first of all, it's an ACC coach, right? So the coach is still learning and growing and polishing skills. I don't know if you notice it, but even when she is asking the question about the success of the session, she starts the question with a closed-ended question. Would success be, and she immediately catches herself, and in the moment she changes to an open-ended question. She goes, what would success look like? I love these little paying attention and noticing and showing the humanity, right? I don't have to be the perfect in every single word that I say in front of my client. I'm here having this relationship with you. And I noticed that I could ask a question that is better. So let me stop and ask the question again in an open-ended way. I appreciate that level of tweaking in the moment, right? Yes. Oh, things for you to, yes, Beth.
I just, the one comment, as she started, and I've had a busy day, I was getting more and more anxious as the coachee was talking. Like I could feel myself kind of getting a little anxious. And I thought, I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. Like, but what I really appreciated in the coach, and I thought maybe that's why she was asking her questions a little slower. I feel like she kind of matched her energy and like some laughing, like I'm with you and I'm listening to you. But her energy, the coachee's energy, as the session has gone on, has really like come down to a place of something I can listen to. It was hard for me at first. And I thought that is skillful, because I feel like sometimes I get lost in that and I'm matching the excitement, and that doesn't help, I don't think.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. What? And that particular coach, she's intense as a person, right? So that observation is a great one, because not only did she match her, with some levity and tracking her, but she also brought it down a notch or two as well.
Amy, she doesn't come across as intense at all, and that's a good thing,
right? Yeah.
I mean, yeah, she doesn't come across that way. But to Elizabeth's point, clients talk fast, and they say a lot, and a lot is unrelated.
Yep.
And then a lot of it is related. And then where to weave in the middle of all that.
Yes, that's so important, Mary.
But the big thing that they did say really quickly, Elias, was you, and I can't remember if it's you or Amy, but one of you told us, get to focus as long as it takes and whatever. There's a saying you guys say, which I can't remember exactly, but that's what happens.
As long as it takes, as soon as possible.
There it is. And she finally got to it right there when you stopped it. So I was thinking of that saying. So anyway.
I remember listening to this session for the first time, and I was like, this is maybe taking a little too long. But then she went and she came through in asking about an outcome for the coaching conversation. So it's good. Well, a couple of things that I think that perhaps would be an upgrade for this coach is to develop a little bit more in the session agreement, especially around what we in the prime model we call the evidence, or using the language that the ICF uses, is the measures of success. So, okay, you want an action item, you want this mindset. How are we going to know that this item is the item that you want, right? What is about this action item that will give you that sense that, this is what I'm looking for. What are the qualities of this action item? Something around that. Meaning as well, I think that could have been developed a little bit more. You know, what makes this so prominent for you today in this moment? Why is this situation being top of your mind right now? So this would support the client to be even deeper, go even deeper into this focus and into the topic of this conversation and the outcome of this conversation. But for ACC level, you know, she had a lot of curiosity. She gave a lot of space for the client. And she did support the client into coming to a specific outcome, a specific, the outcome for the coaching conversation. So good for her. Okay. Excellent. Perhaps another point would be helpful to utilize reflection in a way that would summarize or tie the bow in the session agreement. That would perhaps be helpful as well. Okay. Shall we continue to listen?
Elias, how far in are we? How many minutes in are we?
So right now we have 11 minutes, and this session is about 35 minutes long.
Thank you.
Good question. Let's keep going.
No, that makes perfect sense. What triggers you into the mental exhaustion that leads to the physical?
Ooh, that's a great question. I honestly think it starts with waking up. However, I will say this. I've noticed this about myself, which I'm proud of Sonia for. It's only taken 41 years. Is like we like have an earlier start time, and like it's embarrassing to be late. You cannot be late. And so I feel like I move quicker into action in the morning than I would in previous years because I'm just like, and I like our earlier start time actually allows for a way calmer start to the day because the kids come a little bit later. So there's more of a buffer, and I do like starting my day that way. So I think that when I wake up tired and I'm exhausted, I have to just be like, accept it, but don't dwell on it. And maybe like either I do like a mantra or like something like that just to focus on what's going well, the abundance, and not the like. Ugh. Sometimes like when I'm on the subway, I really focus on people who I see, like I look for random acts of kindness. And I really like think about, oh my God, like what a blessing this person's in our midst, like holding the door, letting someone have their seats, like helping someone. So I try to like focus on like the good things I see. Like the person at Starbucks that always says good morning.
What is your morning routine?
I wake up, I look at my phone and like either read an article or like play a word game, and then I'm like, get up. Or I hit snooze and then I get up. And if it's too late to shower, then I won't shower because I try to shower at night. I'm a night showerer, but I feel like lately I've been so tired at night too. But if I need to shower, then I'll get up a little bit earlier. But and then I just kind of get dressed and go. And I try to like the ultimate, like you can't leave later than 6:45. So I know that, like I feel like that's been really helpful is like I have that was my issue last year. Is like I feel like I would figure out how late I could push it. And that just is stressful. So like I know that 6:45 is like you have to leave. So if I'm not out of bed, even if I'm in bed at like 6:38, I'm just like, get up, get your clothes, go.
That's very impressive. If you could get out to the door at 6:30.
I'm always like that. I've always been like that. Like get up and go. I know I gotta go or I'll be in late, and that's embarrassing. Bad things will happen.
Can you think of times this year or in years past when you've woken up possibly tired, but in a very positive mindset, or have been able to turn it into a day?
Yeah. I feel like it always is like, it has to do with, I like think about something I'm looking forward to that day. Like, so if it was like an exciting assignment, or like I love teaching this class, or like I love this small group, or even like, oh, I'm going to a Broadway show tonight, or like when I had a crush on Daryl before we were dating. Like, oh, I get to see my crush at work today.
Oh, I love that.
So yeah, it's like focusing on something I was looking forward to, whether it was work related or life related, or even like, oh, I can't wait to do Pure Bar tonight. It's my favorite like Pure Bar class.
Do you have any of those things lined up that you can think about?
Well, I am. Oh, and here's the other thing. Like, I am in grad school and I love my classes. I've always loved my classes. And so I think that too, like, I do look forward to teaching on Mondays and Wednesdays, and I do like my class. So I think things like that. And my sister and I will try to get together. And so, yeah, I think like I would like to do some more bar classes, but like lining up things, I like that. Lining up like things that excite me. Yeah.
You mentioned this idea of a mantra.
Yeah. Like a phrase. Like, I'll say like when I started doing like therapy and meditation, and when I was like having like a lot of spiraling thoughts, I think something I would say to myself is like, you are not your thoughts, or like things like that, like positive phrases that I sometimes just like go back to like flip the thinking. Yeah. Oh, that reminds me. Okay, I gotta look this up. There was a mantra. Oh yes, okay. I'm laughing because so I would like do this meditation group, and you have heard of Thich Nhat Hanh, the Buddhist monk. He just died recently. Have you ever heard of him? Okay. Well, I have a lot of his books, and there's a mantra actually that I loved that we did my meditation group, and I used to do this during the pandemic, especially when I was so stressed out. I'd be running all the time in Central Park, and it's just the phrase "present moment, wonderful moment," and it's just like you say it when you breathe in, you breathe out, and I would like say that over and over again to be like, okay, like ground yourself, and like this is a good moment, because then, and I like would say things like that over and over again, so that when I'm just running, I'm like not thinking about, oh my God, we're in a global pandemic. Oh my God. Like, so that's something I would also like. I love visuals. And so something I would always visualize is like with emotions is like you're in the sea, and like the waves, like your emotion comes in, it comes out, like just like the waves, like just like you're cycling through life. I actually also, there's another visual that I love about kind of what we're talking about. Like when you're like, and I find this is like, I feel like I think about this a lot, because it's like when I'm like not all in, that's when there's the stress comes. Even if it's like it, when I say not all in, it's like if I sit here all day and I'm like, I'm so fucking tired. It's like, okay, well, you already signed your contract. You're already decided to be here. That's where you are. And so if you the thing is like, if it's like if you're at sea, I love sea metaphors, but it's like if you're at sea and you're clinging to a boat, try not to drown, the boat gets all like this. It's just like you have to let go and like float into the water. And I think about that a lot at work. It's like I'm doing things I love, teaching at City. I love that I have this opportunity. I'm like, okay, yes, I think it is a privilege to teach young people. But if I just sit there and think about, I'm so freaking exhausted, I don't want to teach ninth grade, blah, 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 then it's like that you're creating all this tension and stress. And so that I need to like, sometimes I focus on that. And I'm like, you're doing this to yourself. You're making this stress that just makes your life exhausting.
What I'm hearing a lot from our past two conversations is there's so much joy and passion in the work that you do. And when you are listing all the things that you love to do, and the fact that you're kind of in awe of you being able to get to do what you want to do. And the moment of you telling, your 4-year-old self,
yeah,
accomplished. what would it look like for you to, when you spiral, to break yourself out of that?
Yeah. Okay. That's a great question. Like how to. And I think like I think it's really like I have to just notice it, acknowledge it, and then not dwell on it. Like let it go.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's when I dwell on it, then I'm like it becomes like its own beast.
How do you think you can do that?
I'm taking notes. I'm thinking. I think it's like the release part. It's like letting it go and just saying like this thought like I release you, or this isn't serving me, or like thinking about fourth grade Sonia and being like tap tap.
What causes you to hold on to the anxiety or the negative feelings?
That's a good question. That's a really good question. I have to like think about why. Why do people do that? Why do I do that? Why would I focus on that? I think it's like a stress response sometimes. Like, for example, I'm thinking like if kids are acting annoying or something, I'm like, ugh, well, I don't even want to be here anyway, or I don't want to teach ninth grade. I feel like it's just like or like, I don't know if it's like a stress response or it's like self-preservation or thinking it's like that's going to self-preserve. You know, when it's like, if something doesn't go the way you want it to go, then you're like, well, I didn't want to do it anyway, so who cares?
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's a fixed mindset. It's a fixed mindset, I bet.
Mm-hmm.
Like when something doesn't go well, and then you're just like, well, I didn't even try. So I guess it's like a fixed mindset, to be honest.
What causes you to be in a fixed mindset?
I think, well, we do this at like DP. We've talked about growth and fixed. And it's interesting because I think my whole life, in terms of like academics, I definitely had a fixed mindset. I definitely was like, I'm better at these subjects, so I'm going to focus on them. I'm not going to try things that are hard. I think it's the embarrassment of not looking like it's an image thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in teaching, I harbor a lot of baggage and like stress and anxiety from feeling like, and I think like I would get performance anxiety a lot. Like I've had some seriously damaging negative experiences with like observations and stuff that like even at like this point in the game, I'm like, I feel like I finally have a fine relationship with it. Like I know that people like it's just I don't like I know that I'm a good teacher and it's not even about that. And it's like it's still though sometimes I feel like you're not allowed to make a mistake. But even though I don't think that anyone, but then when I look at the people, I actually this is like a game I played too. I like look at everybody and I'm like, do they really think that? No, they don't. Nobody thinks that. So I think it just comes from like, again, I think a lot of the source of a lot is anxiety or like the feeling of stress that like everything has to be perfect. And what I love about my coach is he knows that I have that mindset. And he'll be like, I know you want everything to be perfect, but it's not going to be. And if you think like that, you're just like basically stressing yourself out.
Mm-hmm.
And he came up to me the other day and he was like, I just like my relationship with my coach has changed so much in such a positive way. And I feel like he finally he's like, I put you with someone that I want them to learn from you. And because he knows this person's behind on their deadlines. And he's like, I know you're not behind on your deadlines. I want to empower this person. I put them with you so that they can learn from you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, cool. And just knowing that like he doesn't, because I think there's a little bit of anxiety, like, oh God, if this person doesn't do it, am I gonna get in trouble? And that's not the case. And so I think that is refreshing to know that the person who is like evaluating me or like coaches me knows what my strengths are and also knows that we need different things of coaching. So I think that feels good. So I think it's just really unlearning and like leaving those things in the past. And like when I really think about it, a lot of those negative experiences were over a decade old. Like, and some of them happened like 15 or 16 years ago when I was young and didn't know what I was doing. I had no idea what I was doing. And I think I just have to let go. Like, because I know I still harbor some of that. I'm just kind of like releasing. And like I think I actually have come to a point where like I was telling this to Daryl the other day. I'm like, I feel like there is something that's come in my brain new in my 13th year of teaching where I'm like, I just want to try so many new things. And like I was listening to this podcast about like this like Australian woman about like how to stop minor behaviors. So I'm like, I feel like what I'm really only dealing with in the class is just minor behaviors that aren't that serious. That just like, and I've been kind of like observing of like noticing a change in behavior, like when kids go from like extremely focused to like then not. I'm like, okay, so my goal like now is like, okay, what can we do to like empower them to be more independent with like lots of scaffolding? So I feel like there's a lot that I'm like learning and interested in and like want to keep developing, which I think is fun and cool. But I think then that also then requires me to sort of like let go of certain like anxieties and understand like there might be a day that's like so chaotic and use it as something to learn from, not like, oh, this sucks.
Yeah. It seems as if what you're saying is there have been a lot of bad experiences with teaching and the people that are coaching you. And sometimes while you can acknowledge it and you know that that's not the relationship you have with your coach, that anxiety still persists and it shows up, and it shows up in a way that then can cause more stress to have.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Like, yeah, exactly. But then like I really like it's like if I look at the feedback I've been given in the last year, put it all in a little folder. It's really like now it's like the next time tries or the pushes or whatever are like actually things that deepen the practice. They're not like little things like, you know, I feel like I've moved beyond the basic level of feedback that I was getting for a while that was frustrating.
And how does that make you feel?
Like I like it because it's like, okay, I finally feel like I'm getting feedback on like the areas that I want feedback on. Like and then it makes me feel like, oh, okay, like people are like looking to like help me create routines and systems, or like I'm like note-taking strategies that like deepen what kids are doing versus like, okay, like versus like, oh, your objective wasn't on the board. Like, okay, but how was my lesson?
So let's pause now. It's been a lot. A long stretch. This is the longest stretch. We still have about 5 or 6 more minutes of this session here, but let's pause and see, what did you notice that this coach is doing well here? And please turn your cameras on and join the conversation.
Well, I personally like the question that she had of, can you think of a time? And I forgot what the rest was, but I wrote it down. I'm like, that's actually just a good open-ended, kind of gets her to think a little bit deeper into her soul.
Can I build on that? Because technically close-ended question, but they clearly know each other so well, it served as an open-ended question. What's the assessor's chair say?
Great observation, both of you. Yes, technically it is a closed-ended question, right? Can you think? No. Can you think? Yes, I can. So it technically is a closed-ended question. However, it is a question that really opens up a lot for the clients to explore. And she went ahead and she had a lot of the client had a minute after that to explore that question. The question is, can you think of times this year or in the years past when you woke up possibly tired, but in a very positive mindset, or have been able to turn it into a day? So what made that question a good question, Mark, that you even mentioned it?
I felt like it just reframed the conversation a little bit to maybe creating a little bit of forward movement, and having her think about something that was getting her to like tackle this challenge of, I'm exhausted. What do I do? How do I do something about that?
Yeah.
Yes.
This is Cindy. I think same thing. I picked up on that as well. But it was her going back to a past experience that she's already had and being able to know something that has worked for her and be able to now put it into this experience.
Mhm.
So the intention of the question was beautiful. Perhaps technically, there was the whole issue of asking a closed-ended question. Probably there was another possibility of asking the same question in an open-ended way, right? What are possibilities, or what are other ways, or other times when you have been able to either you woke up tired, but you were able to turn the day around? You could have asked that question open-endedly, but the intention here, and I think that the power of this question is that supported the client into disrupting from their point of view and putting themselves into looking at the situation through a different point of view. In this case, a different point in time where things worked well.
Well,
Yeah.
and it led to her concluding that she's, one of her things is that she's got a fixed mindset. And so that fixed mindset was a big pivot for her.
Yep.
And so that question and her series of questions, that's the thing I wrote down in big letters, was when the client pivoted to, wait a minute, I have a fixed mindset. And I think we're here to talk about good things, but I only wish that fixed mindset would have come back again, because for me, that was the gem for evoking awareness. I did hear several other things about bad experiences and anxiety and things like that, but those seem to be recalling sort of past experiences. But the forward progress was this concept of fixed mindset, and that would have been a pivot point.
The question that the coach asks right after that fixed mindset was, what causes you to be in a fixed mindset? So the coach really addressed the fixed mindset. And here's the other thing. At any given session, there will be 10,000 different ways of addressing the situation. And all of those 10,000 different ways are wonderful. And I may listen to one thing. Amy will listen to another thing. David will listen to another thing. Anne will listen to another thing. Laura will listen to another thing. Does that mean that mine is better than Amy's, or Amy is better than mine? No. It's just that these are two individuals that are coming together and raising the question, right? So the important thing, thinking from the assessor's chair, is that she didn't overlook the fixed mindset. She addressed it, she noticed it, and she brought it back to the client. So that is a beautiful demonstration of skill.
And that's something I just want to piggyback on, Elias, in that when we're assessing, we don't pay attention to direction. As Elias said, there's 10,000 pathways up to the top of the mountain. We don't pay attention to direction, and we don't pay attention to style either, because each coach has their own style. So it's the demonstration of these competencies that would, you know, hearing that mindset piece would be pulling that out. That's listening, right? And hearing those kind of nugget words and pulling them out and not stepping over them.
And I'm pretty sure that this coach, if this coach would listen to the session, this coach would go back and say, I could have done that. I could have done that too, right? Does that mean that it invalidates what the coach did in the moment? Absolutely not. What else? What else worked well?
I think we always say the client always has all the answers, right? That's what we say. And I think that that question helped to facilitate the client discovering her own answers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I want, thank you for that, Anne. And I want to emphasize that it was by disrupting the client's point of view and bringing the client to a different point of view, in this case, a different point in time, that supported the client to see the situation more broadly. Yeah. Anything else?
Yeah, I actually felt that the client was trying so much to just describe everything that was happening, a lot about the what's. And every time the coach was trying to address the who. And I think by getting her back, she was trying to basically say, what have you got in your toolbox that has already worked? Let's try and address that. And actually, at the time, I was thinking, oh, I could have gone back to when she spoke about being in a boat, you know, holding on to something that is not serving you. But I wasn't sure what would actually come after this. So that I think she was really trying to address the who, which I'm trying to listen to with all of everything this client was talking about. And I think she did that wonderfully well.
That is a beautiful observation for me. This idea that in this session, a less skilled coach may go directly into strategies. Okay, so what are you going to do? What is happening here? Well, let's figure this out. Oh, so when this happens, we are going to do this and going strategically. And this coach is opening up the space for more self-discovery and giving a lot of space for the client to fully express themselves. And at the end, putting everything sometimes into a concise summary for the client to listen to themselves back, right? So that is beautiful that the coach is not trapped into simply finding a strategy.
Yeah, and I want to go back to giving the space because you had said that, Cindy, because Shakti had asked in the how much is too much space? And I just want to address that really quick here. Too much space is when it's about the coach, right? It's not tracking the client. It's not moving the client forward. And that the client, it's okay if the client's uncomfortable. That silence is uncomfortable, and that's what evokes more. But when it comes to the point where the client is lost in too much space and doesn't know where to turn next or what to do next, that's when it's too much, because we're keeping it moving forward. And with that said, I want to address that this coach did a great job, and with that whole chunk we just played for you was her facilitating her learning about herself, understanding more about herself and understanding more about herself in relation to the topic she's talking about.
You know, just to add one more thing about the space. Space is one of the qualities that we listen to when we are assessing at MCC level. Lots of space, lots of space. Yeah. Excellent.
The other thing she did really well was reflection at the end. I mean, that woman talked forever and then she summarized it all beautifully, I thought. And even reflected back to saying your 4-year-old or 4th grade self. So she tied everything in. So I thought that was amazing because I was getting lost.
Yep.
So.
Exactly. Megan, I got lost too for a moment where she started talking about another coach, and I'm like, what other coach?
Yeah.
Where are we? You know, which coach are you referring to? Aren't you talking to your coach?
Like, what's going on?
that was the one thing I found that was pretty compelling was in the midst of all of that she was centered on herself. She went into a lot of vulnerability around her anxieties, her issues that, the coach really stayed in the coaching lane and had never touched any of those topics that I suspect are being, spent on discussion with her therapist, because she even mentioned her therapist.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that is a real fine line to. I mean, we're not therapists. I mean, maybe someone on the session is trained in that way, but just being really, really clear on where the coaching belongs. I thought she navigated that well.
And Mary, I think that this is also credit to the coach, to the agreement, the overarching agreement for this particular client. The client is very clear about what is therapy, what is coaching, and addressing this and navigating through her whole system, but being able to address within a coaching conversation what comes to coaching. So that means they most likely had a conversation about it, and the client was very clear. So there is great agreement there. A couple of things for us to keep in mind. Wonderful things that this coach is demonstrating is customized questions, and that's perhaps why sometimes she is very mindful in the words that she's using, because she is customizing the questions. She's asking the questions in the moment, and she is utilizing, as Joe mentioned earlier, language from the client. So these questions are not prescriptive questions, but she is creating questions that are customized based on the client. Acknowledging, she is full of acknowledging, full of not only verbally, but in her whole demeanor. She is acknowledging the client, accepting the client, allowing space for the client. So acknowledging and supporting the client to be who she is, right? If she is a verbose client, let me allow this client to be verbose. It's honoring the client for who they are. So acknowledging was beautiful. The other thing that I want to notice here is that she is attending to the focus that the client established. The client said, I want to understand, and I want to have an action, and I want to understand my mindset. What happens here when I get stressed out in the middle in my day? And she is asking questions that are related to that particular agreement. That is one beautiful thing for us to be mindful of, how the agreement anchors the whole session. Without having a clear focus, we are not going to be able to anchor the session, and perhaps not even have clear questions to be able to ask. And she is using the client's language. There is this aspect of pulling the threads together. I even love when she says, I'm noticing even from previous sessions, and I'm noticing some themes happening here. I forget exactly how she's saying. So she is not only paying attention to what the client is saying in the moment, but she has this whole vision of what is happening with the client in mind. And she's paying attention to all of these points. And when she brings to the client, she brings the wholeness of the client. Amy, anything you want to add?
No, I think you've covered all the points. I think that, again, I heard some pauses. There was one, and Shakti, this one's for you. Did everyone hear that one? It was a little too long, right? Where she was struggling to find the right question. However, I'm going to tell you, with my assessor's ears on, I would rather see that than somebody just throw out a useless question. One that doesn't have context with what she's saying, or doesn't build off of what she's saying. I'd rather hear that awkward pause. And so, and the client didn't miss a beat, because she's moving 180 miles an hour down the road. So that client, that was fine, so.
Yeah. One thing to keep in mind is that just because there is silence, just because there is a pause, it does not necessarily mean that the session has paused. There is a lot of that is happening in the mind of both the coach and the client. And we are just providing space for these things to develop, right? So that's why MCC sessions, if you pay attention to MCC sessions, there is a lot of space, right? Because we are respecting the processing happening internally. Okay.
And the intention on the coach's part too. The coach is forming their intention with what they're asking or reflecting. Yeah.
A couple of upgrades is I think that there were some closed-ended questions that could have been asked open-endedly. So be a little bit more technical on the questions as well. And also there was a moment on minute 19 here that the coach asked the question, what are you going to do about it? Which is prompted a little bit towards action within the space of reflection. So nothing wrong. I think that she was being mindful of the moment that the client was in at that particular time in the coaching conversation. But it's something for us to be mindful. Are we jumping into action too early? So something to keep in mind over there. We have 5 more minutes to go for this session. Let's see how this coach is wrapping things up. Okay.
Yeah. What learning has been happening for you today in this session?
I learned so much. I mean, like, it's so helpful. I feel like this is exactly what I want in life, is like, it feels like career therapy in like the best way. I think what I'm learning is like, I'm really in control of the experience, and it's whether or not I want to have a good one or a bad one.
Mm-hmm.
And I think something I can work on is like, and I'm like this sometimes, it's like, well, that phrase, like, you control the weather. It's like, I think sometimes I'm like, I let myself, if something bad happens, like, then that's the narrative of the day, even if 100 good things happened.
Mm-hmm. So what could be some of your next steps?
I think like figuring out a strategy or practicing. I think this week could be practicing a strategy of like something I can say to myself in the moment to change the narrative or change the thinking.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned something that you used a lot during COVID. Have you used that lately?
No, I haven't. I should actually. I just thought of it when we were talking. I'm going to try that this week. Like saying that to myself, like present moment, wonderful moment. That's literally my favorite because I just feel like that. I love that phrase. And I just remember when I'm like be running in Central Park and I'd be so stressed, like present moment, wonderful moment. I just calling something a wonderful moment, I think has such an impact. And I feel like another thing I think a lot about is like, if you can't make it work now in this moment, then like you're not going to make it work anywhere. So like if you were to like drop out of society and go to Connecticut, these problems are going to follow you wherever you go.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need, like, that's my biggest thing too, is like, if you can't find peace in like the middle of one of the largest cities in the world with poop everywhere, trash, people shooting up, the yelling, if you can't find your peace there, like you're not going to find it anywhere. It's going to like, you have to find that. And I think it's like a mindset. So it's like, yeah, it's very quiet when you're in the country, but your problems don't just go away.
Mm-hmm.
They might stay away for a week or two, but I just am a firm believer of like the time, like life is happening now. It's not like, oh, if this, if that, if this.
Mm-hmm. It sounds really clear. It sounds that you have a clear idea of how to proceed forward and how to make it so that you are reframing the day in a way that helps you feel in more control and less anxious.
Yes. More, I'm gonna write that down, like more in control and less anxious.
Do you have everything you need in order to practice that?
I feel like I do. Yeah.
Awesome.
More in control and less anxious. Absolutely. I feel like I do. And I do like actually like what I do like about my schedule is like I'm done teaching by like 12:15, and then like the afternoon is when I have prep periods. And so it's like I like that because then I feel like it allows me to like kind of wind down before I go teach again at night. So I'm just like I'm still working, but it's it's like okay, the intensity of the work is in the morning, and then at the end of the day is when I'm like prepping and like then helping out in the hallway, jumping in, helping out any way that I can. And like I like that because like I feel like I'm working, but I'm also like just relaxing a little bit.
Sounds lovely.
Yeah.
How do you feel about ending our session here?
I feel good. I mean, I could talk to you all day long.
I feel the same. Awesome. Well, Sonia, thank you so much. I'm really excited to hear how your week went on next week.
I can't wait to talk to you.
Bye.
All right, bye.
Excellent. What did you notice here that the coach did well? Closing this session.
This is Cindy. I would say this was her strongest part of the whole coaching session. She wrapped up reflection. She got to some action. I think she just did a wonderful job. She did add a couple closed questions, but I think this was a really strong piece for us.
Yeah, I love that you're noticing it. It is strong because she was able to assess the learning that the client had. So there was a good recap there. She was able from the learning. So what are the actions? What are you going to do about it? And she also addressed like, what do you need? It was a closed-ended question there, but what will support you into the following through this plan that you designed for yourself? And she also closed the session by partnering with the client. Is this a good time for us to close the conversation, right? So there were, she really followed here literally in the guidelines that the ICF give as far as concluding a coaching session. Yeah. Anyone else?
Acknowledge the client's work too. We're throwing, acknowledge the work the client had done in the discovery. That gets missed a lot, by the way.
Yes, celebrating with the client. Anything else that you notice here?
She also asked her for permission to conclude the session, which I thought was great.
Yeah.
That demonstrates partnership with the client even as we close the session, right? We don't close the session, we close the session. We invite the clients to close the session. They are the ones in charge. Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, so beautiful points there, celebrating, what I call systems of support in the prime model. I call it the systems of support. What are the resources that you need? So she covered this very well. I think that upgrades for ACC level is continue to pay attention to the open-ended questions, right? Some questions were delivered closed-ended, and that's my pet peeve. Not that closed-ended questions are not allowed in coaching at all, but for me, is like there is no reason for a coach to ask a closed-ended question when there was a possibility to ask it open-endedly. It's a technique that we can develop. And the other thing is like there is nothing wrong with here, but there is a moment that she says it sounds really clear. It sounds like you have a clear idea of how to proceed. So one thing to be mindful is it sounds clear to me. How clear is it for the client? Right? So just be mindful of, am I putting words in the client's mouth? Am I making assumptions of where the client is? So perhaps a more open-endedly way to do that is how clear do you feel about this and this and that, right? Ask a question there. Nothing wrong with that statement at all, and nothing wrong with sharing how we feel in the relationship that is happening with the client, but perhaps that could be a little bit more open-endedly. What else?
I noticed that
have a question. Oh, so go on, Joseph. Go on.
No, if you want to go first, please.
Thank you. I noticed that there was no time check at all. And when you told us she had about 5 minutes left, I panicked because I thought that lady wasn't going to stop. And how on earth was she going to bring this to a closure? There was no time check at all. I didn't hear any. And at the last minute, I did not hear, we now have 5 minutes, because I've had that and the thing will just run for another, I don't know, an extra 15 minutes or so. How important is that?
That's a good point for me. Yes. Well, it's not a must, but timestamps are helpful, very helpful, because it supports the client into knowing, oh, we have 5 more minutes, we have 10 more minutes. But sometimes the session happens so organically that, it's okay. There is no need for a timestamp. So it depends. It's a technique that we can or cannot use depending on the situation.
And that's something we look for in higher levels, the mostly MCC level. It's going to wind down and sound completely seamless as it winds down. But you get better and better over time managing that time, but also in nonverbal cues in tone, in cadence, in the questions you're asking, all of that will start to wind the session down, making that unnecessary.
Okay, yeah. Well, wonderful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We have a couple of final remarks here. Before we go into the final remarks, I just want to remind you, we will have another Prime event where we are going to be playing a recording at PCC level. So then it would be wonderful for you to notice the distinction of level, what this coach is demonstrating and what is expected at PCC level. So this is coming up as well. I want to remind all of you that we have a level 1 program starting next week. So there is still a chance if you are interested in joining the level 1 program, let us know. And level 2 registration is going up very soon. So if you are interested in joining our level 2 program, be ready, because as soon as we open the registration and we release the schedule, you're ready to enter the level 2 program. Don't forget that we have Prime Hour this month, and Amy can I forget what day it is, but we have Prime Hour coming this month, and this is an open, free moment for you to join us. Some of you have been regulars at Prime Hour, and please join us for Prime Hour. And don't forget,
March 11th at noon Eastern.
Oh, so we are back to our regular time of noon. So March 11th, please, in a couple of weeks, we are going to have Prime Hour. Prime Space, our podcast, please subscribe, please listen. Prime Edge, our blog, lots of wonderful things happening at Prime Coaching Academy, so stay tuned. To wrap up here, Amy, what are the final thoughts that we want to give to everybody?
So here's what we would like to give you for final thoughts. Don't just start recording when you're ready to get your certification. Record now. What we're giving you in this webinar is really a template to follow so you can listen to your own recordings. Find your own evidence of demonstrating the competencies, okay? Closed-ended questions, watch them, because they will get picked up in an assessment. And as Elias said, that's the beauty of going back over your own recordings. And sometimes you can just record yourself. You don't even have to record the client, just to hear what you're saying and to say, could I have asked that question in a different way? Did that question have intention behind it, or was it just a toss-up? And so when you do choose to make closed-ended questions or use them, they're done with intention. And I think that's it, except I want to ask a question now. Have we taken a little mystery out of these faceless, nameless people who you send your recordings to when they assess them for certification?
I don't respond to closed-ended questions.
Joe. Oh, you got me.
Sorry. The answer is yes, by the way.
Okay. What else? Is there anything left that's mysterious to you in this faceless, nameless assessor situation that we could address for you in the future?
Are they gonna, I know we hate closed-ended questions, but if they have just a couple, is it going to just like totally nix them? No.
Absolutely not. This session was a pass.
Okay,
And this session has quite a few closed-ended questions. And we have to understand that this is a coach that is coaching at ACC level. For ACC, it was good. We know at ACC level what closed-ended question and open-ended questions are, and this was definitely one of the upgrades that the assessor gave to the coach. Pay attention. This is a simple, very simple technique that the coach can clean up very quickly. So something, yeah.
We keep recording ourselves.
I'm curious if, like every interviewer has a style, how they approach the interview when they're interviewing candidates, different people, whatever. I wonder if assessors also have different styles for how they are approaching the recording. And, I imagine some sitting there with their checklist, checking off, okay, did this, a ding here, ding there, and where is, if there is any room for, I'm going to just use the word grace because I can't think of anything else, but where is the room for, good, not great? Did all of this really well over here, but, because this feels more, in some ways, more art than science. At the same time, you do have the competencies. You do have this roadmap that says, does this person possess all of that?
Mary,
what do you think?
Well, Mary, that every assessor is highly trained, and we go through hours of training in how to assess, because and one of the points that we assess, and Amy mentioned this earlier when we are going through the training, is to have a distinction between what is demonstration of skills and what is style. Every coach has a style and has a different style, but there are specific skills that the community has developed as these are best practices. So when we are trained to assess, we are focused on the best practices. And I mentioned earlier at the beginning of the session, what we call the ACC bars, right? This is a checklist that the assessor has, and based, not my checklist, not individual checklist. This is what expectations that the community has come together, the 50,000 coaches around the world. There was some research being done and to create like, what are the expectations at ACC level? And we assessed based on those expectations. So, there is an episode of Prime Space that I mentioned the distinction between ACC, PCC, and MCC. And me, like I like to streamline all of these concepts, right? We have all of the core competencies, and then I created the Prime model, right? What is this? How can I streamline this in a way that we can grasp that? And for me, when I look at the bars, the ACC bars, the way that I would streamline is three points that we need to keep in mind. First of all, this coach has to demonstrate that this coach understands what coaching is, and that this coach is not jumping into different roles. The coach is not going into consulting or therapy or giving advice or mentoring. This coach is in the role of coach. Did this coach in this session fulfill that point? 100%. The other point is this coach has a basic understanding, of the coaching framework, the coaching conversation framework, beginning, middle, and end. There is a focus, there is a session agreement, there is time for exploration, and there is a conclusion where the coach supports the client into moving forward, right? What is the action? Did this coach fulfill this second requirement? 100%, right? Session agreement could have been a little bit more developed, but it was well done enough, right? The third point is language. Language is concise, language is streamlined, questions are asked one at a time, it's utilizing client's language, right? It's allowing the space for the client to explore. Those are the 3 points. Did this coach fulfill that third point? 100%. Okay, so these are things that we are paying attention. And I streamline in these 3 points seems very simplistic. When you look at the ACC bars, there is a lot more over there, but I do feel that you can, if you look at all of the bars, you can concise them. But bottom line, they follow these 3 points. Okay, at ACC level. Okay, PCC level, different story.
I'd like to add here, I'm going to drop the nugget here at the end. You may have a fantastic coaching session that you've recorded. The clients moved like crazy, had big aha moments all over the place. But if you're not showcasing those points that Elias just brought up, you won't pass. So that's a very important thing to keep in mind. The recording you choose, we need to see what you've got. We need to see those chunks that you understand it. And some of them, that you might have a fantastic coaching session that glosses over one of those or two of those completely, and we need to see it.
The example that I give is like when you go to get your driver's license, the instructor there needs to know that you know how to parallel parking. Even if you live in a place where you're never going to parallel parking, right? But when you are going for your driver's license, you need to demonstrate that you know how to do that. So just driving on the highway will not necessarily tell that instructor that you know how to parallel parking. So if you have a session that is beautiful, you are in the driveway, but it's not demonstrating the skills, that assessor will not be able to grant you a certification because that assessor did not have the evidence that you know. It's only one recording, right? So make sure that that recording that you have substantially demonstrates all of the skills that you are learning in coach training. That's imperative. Make sense, the distinction? Anyways, people, thank you so much for this conversation here. And I see that some people had to drop in the middle of the way, especially because it was a 90-minute session, but I appreciate you guys that stayed here all the way to the end. And this has been recorded. We are going to put this in our YouTube channel. So make sure that you go to YouTube, look for Prime Coaching Academy, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and soon in a few days, you're going to have that recording that you can listen to it again. All right. And I will see you back at Prime Hour. All right. Take good care, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hey, everyone.